everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Hack, and I have been busy previewing ESO's latest chapter expansion, the High Isle chapter. Now, after putting in tons of hours over the past week on a special preview server, I'd like to share my thoughts on this latest DLC release, including my review of the zone itself, my thoughts on the chapter's storyline and cast of characters, as well as the chapter's new features. And as always, I will try to keep this preview video as spoiler-free as possible and stick mostly to my general impressions, but be warned that some potential for spoilers always exists with a chapter preview like this. Also, the footage I'll be showing in the background was provided by ZeniMax, as I wasn't allowed to record any video footage of my own. Though don't worry, more detailed guides and videos will be coming very, very soon, but for now, let's jump into the High Isle chapter. If you're new to the Elder Scrolls Online, you may be wondering what's all the fuss about. Well, it's that ESO releases one big chapter DLC in addition to 3 smaller DLCs spread out throughout the year. The first DLC, Ascending Tide, already dropped in Q1, and coming next for Q2 is the chapter DLC called High Isle. And this is basically ESO's version of a full expansion, a big new zone, new stories, new characters, new sets, and new features. Now, as we've seen in the past, chapter expansions are not free and are not included as part of your ESO Plus membership if you happen to have one, so keep that in mind. High Isle is a separate purchase for all users. And in terms of release date, High Isle is set to release on PC, Mac, and Stadia on June 6th, and then consoles on June 21st. The biggest part of any new Elder Scrolls Online chapter is definitely the new zone itself. Every year, the developers look to expand on ESO's already gigantic amount of playable space, and we always like to speculate on what zone is coming next. This year, I think all of us were surprised with the reveal of High Isle as the chapter location, because it's never been explored in any Elder Scrolls title ever. So this is a brand new imagining, a brand new piece of the Elder Scrolls puzzle, which is exciting to see. The theme for this year is Bretons, and the chapter's focus on Breton lore and culture is brought to life in this amazing, never-before-seen location. High Isle itself is part of the Sistrus chain of islands located west of Tamriel and north of Somerset. As I played through this island, most of the beginning terrain is actually very reminiscent of Somerset as well, so if you're a fan of that previous chapter's look and feel, then there's definitely going to be a lot for you to like here as well. High Isle is all about nobility and riches, and the landscape and locations you'll encounter very much fit that theme. You'll travel to multiple medieval-themed castles and towns throughout the zone, all with an emphasis on that knightly culture. Think King Arthur's court, for example. Another big theme is ships, including traveling between several smaller islands, and of course pirates come with that territory as well. Now, in terms of size, I think the Somerset Island comparison fits here as well. When you're on the main High Isle zone, it's about the size of Somerset, I would say. This is interesting because on the world map, High Isle more closely resembles the smaller Alliance starter zones, but when you zoom in on it, it's suddenly the size of Somerset. This is definitely strange, but what can I say? Maps are weird in ESO. But that's not the only location you'll travel to in High Isle. In fact, I was pleasantly surprised that there is a second large island that you visit called Amenos. This gets unlocked later in the story and basically doubles the size of High Isle in the process. This reminded me a bit of the Greymoor chapter with Western Skyrim and eventually discovering that huge area of Blackreach underneath. This has a similar effect, and it's a nice surprise. There are also other smaller islands you'll visit as the story unfolds, and the usual zone content you'd come to expect from a large chapter release, including a brand new 12-person trial, 2 public dungeons, a multitude of delves, new world events called Volcanic Vents, challenging world bosses, and a main story quest with several parts, as well as plenty of side quest content. So what about the story? Well, I don't want to say too much that you haven't already heard to avoid spoilers, but I will say that I enjoyed this story more than other recent chapters because it wasn't all about some end-of-the-world Daedric takeover. This story was a much smaller, more nuanced political story about the zone of High Isle and its factions, the nobility, knights, merchants, pirates, and the Ascendant Order. The Ascendant Order is the new quote-unquote evil faction. They did seem a bit generic to me at first, but there was enough there to keep the story moving, and the returning characters that you interact with from previous ESO stories actually sell the story much better, as you fight side by side with them to uncover more of the chapter's mysterious plot. And I did have one disappointment here, which I don't think is a spoiler really, because it's been talked about during previous events, and that's the second island you come across called Amenos. This is described in the lore and through conversations as a dangerous and deadly island filled with savage beasts, poisonous plants, slavers, and pirates. It's a prison, but it's also basically lawless, and once prisoners are sent there, they're essentially left to die. That's pretty edgy in the Elder Scrolls Online. Visually, when you arrive in Amenos, it completely fits that description though. It's a jungle, think Grotwood, but much, much darker. This new area of the High Isle chapter is really well done, and it fits that scary jungle vibe perfectly. At this point, I was completely sold on the setup. I was wondering, what was actually outside in that jungle? Was there something that could actually kill me? Maybe stronger enemies like the old Craglorn Zone days? Could there be maybe roaming world bosses like the Deadlands DLC recently introduced last year? But as soon as I opened the doors, unfortunately, I was actually disappointed. Other than the environment itself, which I already mentioned, is great. It's totally dark and thematic. The enemies just felt very simple and unthreatening. Now keep in mind, this was an early test build that I was playing, and we may still see more enemy variety added here in the future, and I hope so, because the environmental storytelling and the tension here is fantastic. We just need the content to match the tone. Add a couple of nasty roaming world bosses here, some environmental traps, both of which were in the last DLC zone of the Deadlands, by the way. Do something surprising. Put slaughterfish in the shallow lakes and rivers of the zone. I don't know. Just do something to make it kill us in a surprising way. I dare you, ZeniMax, to do something fun and challenging like this with Amenos, and I think the players will actually appreciate you more for it. So we talked about the zone and story, which are for the most part very positive. But what about new features? Well, the main new system coming with the High Isle chapter is actually something completely new and unexpected. It's a tavern game you can play against other players, socially or competitively with ranked PvP, and even against NPCs through quests. This is the new Tales of Tribute card game. Now, I will be honest and say this new system is a bit controversial. That's because many players definitely wanted more with this expansion, either a new class or new skills, new weapon skill lines, perhaps a new guild skill line. But I also think that players don't fully understand the scope of this game yet and just how big it's going to be. This game is going to expand the entire ESO map, for one thing. You can play in taverns throughout the world and challenge NPCs there. There's quests. There's also deck collection, where you start with just a few decks and then expand on those, building up bigger and better by collecting fragments out in the world. Basically, think of this as another system like Antiquities, where it's going to continue getting bigger and growing as the game grows with it, except I actually like Tales of Tribute more than Antiquities because the minigame itself is more fun, you can play it against other players, and there's no skill line that you need to grind in order to progress or get better in this game. Anyway, I played the game quite a bit during my preview time, but I also wanted to bring in somebody with more card game experience because I've never really played something like this before. So I asked Adam from Brawl We Got This what he thought about Tales of Tribute, and here's what he had to say.
Yeah, so as far as the card game goes, I personally have really been enjoying it. The fact that they have a deck builder mixed with like a resource builder game is really interesting to me. There's multiple win cons, and it adds a unique perspective on like the strategy you have to take. So I think this will surprise people that maybe don't like card games, because it gives you essentially a whole other time sink in the game that can give you some great rewards from ranking up in PvP. And I just like the different combo aspects of the game. I think the combos make it fun. The ability to play different styles with each of the patrons makes it fun. I'm interested to see if they add on to it and what some of the more powerful cards.
Big thanks to Adam over at Brawl We Got This. If you want to hear more about Adam's take on Tales of Tribute and the entire High Isle preview event that he attended as well, I'll have a link to his preview video in the description down below. So other than the Tales of Tribute addition to the High Isle chapter, what else can we expect? Well, for one, 2 new companions will be added to the zone. This will be very similar to the Blackwood chapter last year, where you'll need to meet these characters somewhere in the zone of High Isle and do their introductory quest before they can join you. At that point, they become your companion. You can start building up rapport with them, you can level up their combat skills, and equip new companion gear. Now, I used both companions during my playtest, and they're actually quite good. First, there's Ember, a Khajiit mage. She quite naturally pulls from the sorcerer class in terms of her companion skills and those combat abilities. And she can do a bit of everything depending on how you build her, including tank, heal, or DPS. I would say playing her as a ranged sorcerer companion for damage purposes probably makes the most sense because she has a nice AoE ultimate, several damage skills, and a passive that increases her damage done and critical chance. Up next, there's Isabel, the Breton Knight in training. Isabel's skills are modeled after the Templar class, which makes her particularly good at both healing and tanking. This is because many of her skills come with a passive healing effect, as you would expect from a Templar. She also has a decent damage shield ability that reduces her damage taken. I actually tested her out solo versus a couple of world bosses just to see how she would do, and with good quality equipment and traits, as well as the best skill loadout, her health never dropped below 80%, completely solo. So that was really good, but both companions can basically do anything depending on how you set them up, whether you need help tanking, healing, adding more DPS. Of course, I will be reviewing all their skills in detail, and I'll be coming out with more companion builds to add to our growing list. So stay tuned for that. In addition to companions, there are also many new and interesting sets that players will want to get their hands on in the High Isle chapter. This includes overland sets, crafted sets, trial sets, and new mythic items. Now, I'm not going to detail every set here in this video, though I will have a preview article up over on our website as soon as this video goes live to showcase those new sets and stats if you're interested. The important thing though is to remember that I was playing a preview build, so any of these could certainly change, but there were quite a few sets that stood out to me in a good way that I wanted to mention. And as far as overland and trial sets, there wasn't too much that was worth mentioning. I'm much more excited to talk about the crafted sets and the mythic items. Under crafted sets, I found something that was incredibly unique. This set had 12 set piece bonuses. Yes, 12, meaning you could basically craft this for every single piece of armor, weapon, and jewelry that your character would wear and get increasing bonuses throughout. The bonuses rotate between max health, max stamina, and max magicka. So by the end, you had 4 health bonuses, 4 stamina bonuses, and 4 magicka bonuses. Now that is an insane amount of stats. Basically like getting an extra tri-stat food buff for free. And I can see that being pretty useful on some solo builds, maybe hybrid builds, even PvP or tank setups. And keep in mind too, you don't have to run all 12 pieces for this new crafted set. Each piece adds up separately. So you could, for example, run 10 pieces and a monster set, or 9 pieces and a monster set with a mythic. It's completely flexible. I actually really love this. I've been asking for more flexible set bonuses for years now, and something like this is a really cool idea and a great step forward in that direction. Other than that, some of the mythic items getting added in this chapter are equally insane. There was one pretty interesting option that caused your roll dodge to give you a large damage shield instead of the typical iframes that roll dodging would normally add. This shield was also not affected by Battle Spirit, so it seems to be meant for PvP, though I can definitely think of some PvP applications for this. There was also another mythic item that may be my favorite ever because it actually supports 1-bar builds in ESO. Yes, 1-bar builds could be making a comeback in the High Isle chapter thanks to this one mythic item. Basically, how it works is it locks you into using only 1 skill bar, but rewards you with a ton of stats for doing so. Think Gaze of Sithis type stats, but times 3. So yeah, if this mythic item stays even remotely as powerful as it was during the preview event, I will definitely be using it and updating some of those 1-bar builds at the same time. And thanks to ZeniMax for really using mythic items to reward players for unique playstyles like 1-bar builds and damage shield builds. I love to see them supporting more off-meta playstyles this way. Now, as I said earlier, if you'd like to see the stats for these mythic and other item sets, I will have the preliminary stats over on our website preview article. Link for that will be in the description if you want to check those out, and we will likely have much more information coming soon. As early as next week, as I expect the High Isle public test server will probably go live on Monday, and we'll get to test out even more new content and changes. So expect tons more videos, tons more guides starting next week. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.